Sojourner Truth, Ain't I a Woman? Imagine a world in which your name is not truly yours, your body is treated as property. Your children can be taken from you, and your voice is expected never to rise above silence. Now imagine that same voice rising anyway, not timidly, not cautiously, but with enough force to shake the moral foundations of an entire society. This is the story of Sojourner Truth, a woman who did not merely endure oppression, but confronted it, exposed it, and helped transform the meaning of freedom and equality in America. She was not born Sojourner Truth. She was born Isabella Baumfree into slavery in New York, a fact that still unsettles easy assumptions, because slavery was not only a Southern institution. Her early life was marked by violence, instability, and forced separation. She was sold from one enslaver to another, treated not as a child with a future, but as property to be exchanged. The system was designed to strip away identity, security, and dignity. Yet even within that brutal structure, something began to take shape. The dangerous idea that her condition was neither natural nor just, and that it did not have to remain permanent. In 1826, that idea became action. With no army behind her, no dramatic rescue, and no promise of safety, she made a decision that altered the course of her life. She left slavery, carrying her infant daughter. As she later recalled, she did not run in panic. She walked away in daylight, sustained by a deep and immovable conviction that she had a right to be free. Before the law fully recognized that freedom, she had already recognized it within herself. That moment was more than an escape. It was a declaration of moral independence, a refusal to accept the lie that one human being could rightfully own another. Freedom, however, did not bring immediate peace. Soon she learned that her young son, Peter, had been illegally sold into the South. For a black woman in the early 19th century, what she did next was extraordinary. She went to court. In a legal system structured to exclude and diminish people like her, she challenged a white man and demanded the return of her child. Against staggering odds, she won. It was not only a personal triumph, it was a public and radical assertion that even a system built on inequality could be forced, however reluctantly, to recognize her claim to justice and her full humanity. In 1843, she made another decision, just as radical in its own way. She renamed herself. Isabella Baumfree became Sojourner Truth. Sojourner, because she believed she was called to travel, and Truth, because she believed that truth was the message she had been sent to bear. This was not a decorative gesture or a symbolic flourish. It was a complete act of self-definition. She was no longer willing to be named by slavery, possession, or the terms imposed on her by others. She remade herself as a public witness, someone who would move from place to place carrying a message, too urgent to keep quiet. As Sojourner Truth traveled, preached, and spoke, her voice entered some of the most contested moral debates of the age. She spoke against slavery, but she also challenged narrow ideas about womanhood, dignity, religion, and power. She did not enter those debates as a polished academic or a conventionally trained speaker. She entered them as someone whose life itself refuted the assumptions on which those debates were built. That power reached one of its most famous moments in 1851 at the Women's Rights Convention in Akron, Ohio. The gathering was devoted to women's rights, yet even there the conversation was incomplete, shaped largely by the concerns and experiences of white women. When Sojourner Truth stood to speak, she did not lean on formal learning or refined rhetoric. She spoke from labor, loss, endurance, faith, and memory. In the earliest account of the speech, she used her own life as proof that the claims being made about women's weakness and delicacy collapsed when confronted with reality. The line later forever linked to that moment. "Ain't I a woman?" captured the force of her challenge, even if the most famous version of the phrase comes from a later retelling. What mattered most was the question at the heart of her message. If society claimed women were too fragile for rights, too delicate for public life, too weak for equality, then what was to be made of a woman who had plowed, suffered, endured beatings, borne children, lost children, and still stood upright before them? That challenge cut deeper than a single argument. It exposed a larger contradiction. The dominant image of womanhood in that period did not include women like Sojourner Truth. It imagined womanhood as white, protected, sheltered, and dependent. Truth shattered that definition simply by standing before her audience and speaking from experience. If she was a woman, and undeniably she was, then any idea of women's rights that excluded her was already morally broken. In that moment, she revealed that racism and sexism were not separate distortions, but entangled ones, and that any movement claiming justice while ignoring that fact was incomplete at its core. What made Sojourner Truth such a formidable rebel of thought was not only what she said, but the method of her challenge. She did not present herself as an object of pity. She presented herself as evidence. She made her own life the argument. Rather than speaking in abstractions, she forced audiences to confront living contradiction. A woman denied rights in the name of ideas about women. A black person denied humanity in a nation speaking of liberty. A formerly enslaved woman exposing the moral weakness of those who considered themselves civilized. Her presence made evasion difficult. Her speech made hypocrisy visible. Long before later generations developed a formal vocabulary for interconnected systems of oppression, Sojourner Truth was already articulating that reality in lived, unmistakable form. She showed that justice could not be divided neatly into isolated causes. A struggle for women's rights that ignored race was not full justice. A struggle against slavery that ignored the particular burdens carried by women was not full justice either. She did not theorize this in academic language. She embodied it, spoke it, and made others reckon with it. In this sense, Sojourner Truth did not simply ask to be admitted into an existing order. She challenged the order itself. She did not seek a more comfortable place within its exclusions. She exposed those exclusions as intolerable. She changed the terms of the conversation by making it impossible to speak honestly about equality without confronting the people who had been left outside its definition. She did not wait for permission. She did not temper her message to make it easier for others to accept. She spoke with directness, authority, and moral clarity. That is why her legacy endures. She was born into a world that denied her name, her autonomy, and her voice, yet she became one of the clearest voices of her century. Not merely a survivor of injustice, but a challenger of ideas. Not merely a witness to oppression, but a force against it. Not merely a victim of history, but one of the people who bent history in another direction. And that is why her question still echoes, not as a slogan emptied by repetition, but as a demand that still tests every claim to justice. Ain't I a woman?